What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7_D. I have this book again, The Transformation of the Southeastern Indians, 1540 to 1760. Yeah, with the Ichi Indians. Here we go. I want to turn to page 95 in this book. And I want you to pick up on certain things, like I've always said. I'm going to. All right. The colonization of the Creek economy. Mattheos, excessive action, which were intended to bring the Apalachicolas to their former obedience, had the opposite effect, steering the Apalachicolas into a more intimate alliance with Carolina traders in the years that followed. In the summer of 1689, reports that English traders were still making repeated incursions into the Chattahoochee River, prompted by Governor Cuyahoga Y. Lasota of Florida to order his subordinates to construct a fort near Coweta in order to prevent the traders from returning. By Christmas, the fort, dubbed Apalachicola after the Spaniards' name for that Indian province, was completed, and a garrison of Spanish soldiers and the Apalachee warriors arrived there in early April 1690. At first, relations between the Creeks and the Spaniards appeared to be on good footing. In May of 1690, the commander of the Apalachicola fort conducted a general conference in the town of Coweta, during which the Indians made their usual promise to obey the Spaniards, while, conversely, the Spaniards tried to convince them that the new fort was their own good. Soon after this amicable conference, however, the Creeks began abandoning their homes on the Chattahoochee in masses from friendlier territory in proximity to English at Charlestown. By April of 1619, the Chattahoochee River was devoid of its entire population, and its inhabitants had reconstituted their towns at various new locations under Osamugi, Oconee, Ogeechee, and Savannah rivers. Can you see that now? The Chattahoochee River. Then we have the Osamugi, Oconee, Ogeechee, and Savannah rivers. All right. Now I'm going to stop there for a little bit, and I'm going to go back to this other book. I really want brothers and sisters to pick up on this, man. This is so obvious. This is the Malinian people. All right. Black peoples include various agricultural settled groups of Bambara, Saniki, Malinki, Saniki, Malinki, Chattahoochee, Osamugi, Oconee, Ogeechee, and Savannah rivers. Now, why would a damn river be named after some damn slaves, man? No, those so-called Geechee were just some straight-up Indian blacks who took in some African slaves, but they were Aboriginal Indian blacks that were already here. They weren't from Africa. They were here. And it's something hard for some of us to understand, man. This information's in your face, because I'm hearing a lot of idiots, man, who are getting mad at us for telling the truth and really digging deep into our history. And they're making nasty comments about us saying that we're Aboriginal blacks mixed in with some black Europeans. These assholes, man. This tells you how the dumbing down of America has really been going on for years. But here, I'm going to go continue to read some more. Although scholars have paid more attention to the later historical events, such as the Creeks' participation in the Yamasee War of 1715, or the formation of their neutral foreign policy during the 18th century. The exodus to central Georgia in 1691 and the occupation of that territory until 1715 deserves exclamation as a formative period in Creek history. One reason for considering this particular epoch of Creek history important was that during this 25-year time span, the consumer revelation in Creek Country occurred, an event which made them a new people in many respects. From the English trading house constructed near the remains of three ancient earthen mounds at Osamugi, the Creeks acquired the 18th century toolkit, quite literally making a technological jump from the Stone Age to the 18th century in the space of a single generation. We should also note that the length of time spent at this location, 25 years, allowed an entire generation of Creek children to be raised to adulthood without knowing what life was like without a reliable supply of English trade goods. It is important to realize, however, that the incorporation of the Creeks into the Atlantic economy occurred not in a peacetime but in an epoch fraught with war. A Creek-led war of revenge against the Spanish and their Christian Indian allies ensued shortly after the migration of the Ochees Creek in 1691. As it turned out, though, the War of Vengeance dovetailed with a more widespread imperial conflict brewing across the Atlantic Ocean. As was so often the case in a world that was becoming smaller by way of exploration, colonization, and imperial rivalry, events in Europe had marked effects on Aboriginal population in and out of way places. Creek country was no exception. Such a precipitous event occurred in 1700 when Charles II, the last Habsburg king of Spain, died without leaving an heir to the throne. Austrian Habsburg, pretty much you know who they were wished to see the Spanish crown remain in the family, sought to install the dead king's nephew as the new Spanish king. King Louis XIV of France, seeking aggrandize the Bourbon family, asserted that his grandson Philip, Charles' grandnephew, had an equal, if not greater, claim to the throne, and had him installed in 1701. Fearing that Philip might unite Spain and France under a single crown, in May 1702, England, Holland, and Austria together declared war on France and Spain. Their declaration of war thereby instituted the War of Spanish Succession, known in America as Queen Anne's War. Alright. In the American Southwest, the declaration of war in Europe allowed the festering territorial disputes between Carolina and Florida to erupt into a full-scale war, which, as we shall see, resulted in a number of stunning English victories. Spain, which claimed territory and extended as far north as Virginia, had never fully recognized the Carolina proprietors' claim to the same land. A treaty signed between Spain and England in 1617 in Madrid specified that England had a right to keep all the territory that it now possesses, but diplomats and colonial officials continued to haggle over the exact definition of the term. Spanish naturally adhered to the strict interpretation of the treaty provisions and sought to keep English expansion to a minimum. For this reason, Spanish officials considered the intrusion of English traders into Apalachicola, as well as the spread of plantations southward towards the Port Royal, to be encroachments on their territory. Carolina imperialists was dreamed of making the American Southeast a part of the British Empire, began considering a variety of schemes to occupy the Mississippi River Valley and the Gulf of Mexico. Complicating matters further still was the fact that Spain's new allies, the French, initiated their own colonial projects in the Southeast as the 17th century drew to a close. In 1698, fearing English encroachment in the Mississippi Valley, Louis XIV of France consented to the establishment of a new colony dubbed Louisiana in his honor. Okay, I'm reading about black Europeans along with these black Negroes here. The colony first governor, Pere Lee Moyni, Sire d'Iberville, conducted 3 voyages between 1698 and 1702 that led to the establishment of the first French forts in the Gulf region. In the spring of 1699, Iberville and his men completed Fort Maurepas near present-day Biloxi, Mississippi, and by 1702 had constructed forts on Mississippi River and on Mobile Bay. The Carolinas, who were well aware of the ravages the French had precipitated against the English colonies in Massachusetts and Connecticut in 1690, rightfully began to fear French and Spanish encirclement. Now, I'm not going to sit there and read all this because I want to skip a part, and I wanted to highlight something right here, okay? Because the Creeks had a regular access to the English traders, they were quickly becoming the South's wealthiest Indians in terms of acquiring European goods. While acquisition of European goods was something that the Indians desired greatly, the economy, as a consequence, began to acquire a distinctly colonial appearance. By definition, a colonial economy is peripheral one, usually rural or agrarian, which provides raw materials for manufacturing centers in core capitalist regions. Because raw materials made up of the bulk of the exports in these regions, profits usually remain small, owing to the overemphasis on resources extraction, which consequently tends to stunt economic diversification and growth. Core capitalist regions, in contrast, possess the ability to take these raw materials, turn them into finished manufactured goods, and in turn sell them at high profits to domestic and foreign markets, including the peripheral regions from which the raw materials came. The very structures of the system virtually guarantees that the core region will reap the greatest rewards from these raw materials, rendering the peripheries dependent on consumer goods produced elsewhere, as well on price fluctuation on the world economy. Being a poor agricultural society, the Creeks had little choice but to provide the English with their only salable commodities: agriculture, produce, furs, and Indian slaves, in order to participate in the burgeoning transatlantic economy. The principal problem was that acquisition of guns, powder, cloth, especially from traders willing to extend credit, eventually made the Creeks dependent upon European technology and severely in debt to English traders. It is significant, for example, that Thomas Nairne's ethnographic description of the Tallapoosa included a discussion of debt. According to Nairne, in addition to the chief's more traditional duties, Tallapoosa chiefs also played a role in hiring people to pay their debts to the English so as not to suffer the ill effects. Likewise, Governor James Moore's attempt to end the traders' practice of trading on trust, a 17th century English term equivalent to the modern credit, and then the absolution of Indian debts in 1703 illustrate that the debt had become a way of life in Creek country during this time period. By 1711, the Ochees Creek Indians were collectively 100,000 deerskin in debt, or approximately 250 deerskins, several years' work per Indian man. I'm not going to read the rest of that. I'm going to stop right there now. The reason I highlighted that, I go back to what I was talking about right here, when I meant to talk about the Chattahoochee River. The Chattahoochee River. And many of these are black Europeans who I was naming, those Europeans. The Chattahoochee River, the Osamugi, the Oconee, the Ogeechee, and the Savannah Rivers. All right, you had your Yuchi Indians, and you go back here. And you have here over in Mali, Saniki, Malinki. Okay, but basically, these were the same damn Negroes, man. All right, and I often said over and over again, how black folks traveled using ships into the Americas, Africa, Europe, Asia, the Pacific Islands, Australia. Our ancestors used wooden ships to travel the damn planet. Not only used so-called dugout boats, dugout ships, they use wooden ships to travel. I mentioned it over and over again. Those names sound similar because they're the same damn people. Alright? Those names, I'll just repeat you again. Saniki, Malinki, Yuchi, Okani, Tallahassee, Kankakee, Appalachia. Those reasons you hear those names so similar because they're the same damn Negroes, man. This is sometimes you can pick up. You need to look at stuff linguistically. These people are the same people. They broke off into different tribes, different groups, and they fought amongst each other, and they end up enslaving one another. Most of our people did not come from Africa. The slaves, majority of slaves were Aboriginal blacks. But the identity was stolen or lost over time, and that other people started writing history and said that we came from a foreign land. I believe that trick was done for the sole purpose of making us foreigners on this land, and then able to say that we have no right to that land, no ownership to that land, so allow other people to come steal that land. Since we're not even indigenous to this land, we became foreigners to this land because we've been reclassified. So we got to understand clearly and think clearly. So when people go on and get mad that we say that we're Aboriginal, we are Aboriginal. This is our land. We are the true original Indians. So we don't need foreigners, include even melanated so-called other black foreigners, telling us who we are when we're Aboriginal to this land. Alright? We're Aboriginal to this land. This is our land. This is our culture. And I didn't even talk about Ofuski yet. I haven't talked about that. You have all these damn towns have these names or these rivers, which is last sounding of ki or gi or chi. With that last sounding, that tells you these are the same damn Negroes. They're the same group of people. If you can't pick up on that, man, I don't know what to tell you. These are the same group of people. Broken off in different groups. The same group of people. The same group of so-called black people. I repeat this again. I'm tired of Pan-Africanism, man. I don't want to hear that stuff because most of our people were part of the empire here in Tamaray. We were part of the empire here. You had black empires here in America. You had black empires in Africa. You had black empires in Asia. There was constant movement. I said before in another video that you did have some Africans come over here because the drying of the Sahara, so they had to move out of that region. Some of them went north to the Nile. Some of them went into Europe. Some of them went over to Asia, into the Pacific, and many of them came here to the Americas. And there was black people already over here. It was constant movement. It was constant trade. I don't see why people don't get this. But when you do not study, and when you get your so-called PhD, and you just regurgitating, just reading word for word what the white folks tell you, instead of breaking it down, instead of critically thinking, this is what you get. You get an ignorant Negro, or the so-called educated Negro, who don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they're taking mess from white folks that was given to them by white folks, and they regurgitate that mess, and they basically process it, and then sending that mess out, and miseducating the black masses. This is something we're going to really have to understand. This is why I emphasize those names. Those names sound similar because they were named after people, the black Aboriginal blacks in that region. Those rivers are named after those black people who sell those creeks, those riverbeds, and they build amongst those riverbeds. I just read you that. And those names sound similar because those different broken off tribes that were here in other Aboriginal blacks in America. Black people in America are consisted of not only the Aboriginal blacks here, but the very different Aboriginal black tribal nations that you're a mixture of, and then very different black groups from Europe that you're a mixture of. Alright, but most of us, our ancestors did not come from Africa. That is stuff that's been pushed by white scholars and, unfortunately, ignorant Negro scholars who have not done really true research on our true history. That's why I don't listen to that Amara Squad mess. That I don't listen to no SETI. That I don't listen to no dog Umar Johnson. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about because they have not done real research. They have not done it, man. Once you pick up on certain things, you will know certain things. You have to do the studying, you have to do the research, and you'll see it. Look at those cliff dwellings among the Anasazi. Look at those cliff dwellings over in Mali. They're the same damn thing because they're the same damn people. The same people. So you have to understand our true history. Most of us did not come from a slave ship from Africa. Most of us did not come from so-called Goree Island. That's a lie. Most of those Geechee people are not descendants from the Angolan slaves. That's a damn lie. Them Geechees, the Goulet, them Geechees, most of them are Aboriginal black Indians whose ancestors were already here. And they took in some black slaves, like I said earlier, and they were absorbed into the Aboriginal black population. But we had just been relabeled because we've been made, quote, our land identity has been stolen from us, so we've been told that we come from thousands of miles away when our home is here. And that seemed to upset and offend some other black people now that we're reclassifying or we are regathering and we're recapturing our true history. That seems to bother them. You know what? Stay bothered, because you cannot understand how we're trying to seek our true history, then you are an enemy just like Paleface. So I want brothers and sisters to do their research, continue to do their research, and continue to bang on it. Because the information is there. Trust me, the information is there. Like I said before, you had a circle enclosure over in Miami. And the other side of there's encampment. The encampment is dated as 7,000 years old. Actually, it's older than that, but anthropologists give you these little closer dates. They downplay stuff. And then the circle enclosure, you had it over in Africa and Europe. You had it over different places because people were selling and traveling around the world. Plus, America's not the new world. Like I said, I still hear black scholars saying that. America's not the new world. America is the old world, as well as Europe, Asia, and Africa are the old world. It just became new to white folks when they start exploring. America's not the new world. I'll repeat this again. America's not the new world. That's white folks talk. Peace and love, brothers and sisters.